Okay.
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 So, hello everyone. Today, we have the first of our resumed sessions because the session before was cancelled because of the typhoon in either Taiwan or so somewhere else there was the typhoon and our speaker, she couldn't be present. So today is our session number 1 and the rest of the sessions will be in this random order because of the circumstances. And we are really happy to meet today Cecilia Woloch, who was one of our first speakers and probably like none of the rest have got so much positive reviews and so many emotions from all of our participants. So today Cecilia will be continuing her workshop on how to teach poetry and how to use poetry in your teaching. But may I just say one word? Cecilia, after your webinar, my husband came home and with Elena Ilyenko, who is TESOL Ukraine president, we were talking so loudly that he was amazed. And I said, yeah, and when he asked why is it so, I said, you know, that was the first time that we understood that people were really interested in what was going on. Because when you are so much traumatized and when you go through so many difficulties, there are things that are really relieving. And that was your session. It's amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being with us. That is.
Thank you so much for what you say, because, you know, as a poet, it's easy to feel that what you're doing doesn't matter, you know?
No.
And yet, you know, for poets, you know, we believe it matters so much. What you can do with language, what you can do with the imagination, because there is magic in it. And this is really where I would like to begin today, because so much of poetry, if you go back as far as you can go back into what we know about the history of poetry, the roots are in magic and transformation and ritual. And what a writer always needs, maybe what we all need, is a little magic. So I would like to begin with some magic words. And this is a poem that's, it's a poem from, okay, it's a poem that's from a tribal people called the Nalungiak, or it's inspired by that and was written by Edward Field. It's called Magic Words. In the very earliest time, when both people and animals lived on Earth, a person could become an animal if he wanted to, and an animal could become a human being. Sometimes they were people, and sometimes animals, and there was no difference. All spoke the same language. That was the time when words were like magic. The human mind had mysterious powers. A word spoken by chance might have strange consequences. it would suddenly come alive. And what people wanted to happen could happen. All you had to do was say it. Nobody could explain this. That's the way it was. Magic words. So today we're going to talk about this transformation that is possible through the use of metaphor. And this is a poem that you probably know, and it's a poem that I need today. And it's quite a famous poem by the American poet Emily Dickinson. Do people know about Emily Dickinson? I see all the heads nodding. And this is perhaps her most famous poem because it speaks to so many people all across time. Hope. Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. It's a poem that she transforms the feeling of hope, which is, how do you get a hold of a feeling? How do you make it real? She transforms that feeling into the image of a bird that never stops singing, no matter the storms, no matter how cold it is, and it never asks for even a crumb. We can hope without even a crumb. We can sing without even a crumb. It's so this poem is the word metaphor, the roots of the word in English. I don't know, what is the word in Ukrainian for metaphor?
It's just the same. It's metaphor. Metaphora. Yeah, it's the same.
Metaphor. And I suppose the roots of the word are Greek. I'm not sure. But it's about transcending, meta, about crossing over from one reality into another. And this is a poem that's it's an extended metaphor. It's one metaphor. So she uses the metaphor of a bird, and then she elaborates on that metaphor throughout the poem. It has feathers. It sings. It doesn't ask for a crumb. It perches in the soul. Okay, so that's one way to take something invisible. Hope is invisible. You can't see it. You can't smell it. You can't taste it or hear it or touch it until you transform it into an image, something you can perceive with one or more of our five senses, or you transform it into a whole series of images. So I'm going to read you another poem. Would you like to see the poems on the screen? Okay. This is a poem by, so I will, another well-loved, well-known American poet. She was more contemporary, Mary Oliver. I wonder if anybody's heard of Mary Oliver. Okay, she was quite famous. Beautiful poems that were very accessible and spoke to things many of us are concerned about. She's known perhaps best as a poet of the natural world. She loved the natural world. So, Emily Dickinson, in her poem Hope, she transforms this abstract thing, hope, it's abstract, into concrete imagery. There's only one other abstract word in the poem besides hope, and that's soul. It perches in the soul. Well, what is the soul? Okay. What color is it? How does it taste? So this is Mary Oliver's poem asking these questions. Some questions you might ask. Is the soul solid, like iron? Or is it tender and breakable, like the wings of a moth in the beak of an owl? Who has it and who doesn't? I keep looking around me. The face of the moose is as sad as the face of Jesus. The swan opens her white wings slowly in the fall. The black bear carries leaves into the darkness. One question leads to another. Does it have a shape, like an iceberg, like the eye of a hummingbird? Does it have one lung, like the snake and the scallop? Why should I have it and not the anteater who loves her children? Why should I have it and not the camel? Come to think of it, what about maple trees? What about the blue iris? What about the little stones sitting alone in the moonlight? What about roses and lemons and their shining leaves? What about the grass? So this poem is a kind of catalog, a list. And actually the catalog, is the oldest form, not only the oldest form of poetry, but the oldest form of writing. The Magna Carta is a list. The book of Genesis is a list. So this poem is a list, and in which she's asking questions. This invisible thing, this abstract thing, the soul. Is it hard? Is it soft? Where do we see it? And why should I have it and not the little stones sitting in the moonlight? And what I love about this poem is every time I read it, it's the questions lead me to a discovery, because you have the feeling when you read it that as the poet is asking herself these questions, she's not predicting the questions. She's asking them as they arise in her, and she's even surprising herself. And that's also what a poet wants to do. We don't want to say what we already know. We want to know something we didn't know before when we say it. So you have to trust the words a little bit. You have to trust the images. I will read you one more poem about an abstract thing, an invisible thing. Probably I'll read you one or two more along the way, but this is poem about fear. So what color is fear? What shape? Joy Harjo is a Native American poet. She's my generation, and she was the poet laureate of the United States for a while. And so this poem, I think it somehow encompasses some of her history, her ancestry, but again, it can speak to all of us who have faced fear. And I feel that one of the most difficult things about fear is when it's pervasive and you can't put your finger on it. So here she puts her finger on it. She puts her whole hand. And in this poem, she's speaking directly to her fear. Fear by Joy Harjo. I release you, my beautiful and terrible fear. I release you. You were my beloved and hated twin, but now I don't know you as myself. I release you with all the pain I would know at the death of my children. You are not my blood anymore. I give you back to the white soldiers who burned down my home, beheaded my children, raped and sodomized my brothers and sisters. I give you back to those who stole the food from our plates when we were starving. I release you, fear, because you hold these scenes in front of me, and I was born with eyes that can never close. I release you. I release you. I release you. I release you. I am not afraid to be angry. I am not afraid to rejoice. I am not afraid to be black. I am not afraid to be white. I am not afraid to be hungry. I am not afraid to be full. I am not afraid to be hated. I am not afraid to be loved, to be loved, to be loved. Fear. Oh, you have choked me, but I gave you the leash. You have gutted me, but I gave you the knife. You have devoured me, but I laid myself across the fire. I take myself back, fear. You are not my shadow any longer. I won't take you in my hands. You can't live in my eyes, my ears, my voice, my belly, or in my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart, but come here, fear. I am alive, and you are so afraid of dying. So she takes fear and I guess we could say she anthropomorphizes it. She turns it into something she can address, speak to, and assert her power over. And she uses so much repetition in the language. The language is quite ordinary in a way. But she repeats it in places like an incantation. And this is another thing we can do with poetry. Sometimes the words are quite simple, but the repetition creates an incantation, which is to say it becomes a kind of song. And that incantational quality can lead to a sense of enchantment. That's where the magic comes in. So this is what we can do with abstract things. I'm going to stop that share because I do have some other poems. But first, I'd like each of you to write down on whatever you're writing on one abstract word, one abstract noun. You can use fear if you'd like, or hope. You can use the soul. You can use love. Any of those words for something invisible, abstract, a feeling or an idea. What is peace? What is anger? Okay. So just take a minute and write down for yourself, make a commitment to one of these words. What is faith? What is despair? What is happiness? What is kindness? Does everybody have one word that she's chosen or he's chosen? Okay. Ludmila, what is your word?
Hello. So
Hello.
I have chosen resilience.
What
I
is
have
the word?
chosen resilience. Yeah.
Resilience. Resilience.
Yeah.
I think that is something that stretches and snaps back. Resilience, great. Someone else, Raisa, what word have you chosen?
My choice is patience.
Oh, great, great. Patience. Marina Timchik, what word have you chosen?
My word is trust.
Ooh, wow, these are great things I hadn't thought about before. Natalia, what do you have? Natalia Liamzina. I think you're muted.
Sorry, just something with my sound. Just maybe patient.
Patience.
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Anyone else I can see? Some of you have other photographs. Ella, what do you have?
Kindness.
Kindness. Okay, kindness. That's a tough one. I will share with you a poem by Naomi Shihab Nye called Kindness. And Naomi Shihab Nye is a Palestinian American poet, friend of mine. And let me see if I can share my screen and let you see this one. There we go. Okay. Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows, and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore.
Я
Only,
сфоткала. Подивись, якого кольору мої очі.
only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. So she takes kindness and transforms it into something that goes with you like your shadow, but only after you've learned what kindness is. So I've given this exercise, of course, to children who have done amazing things with it. This poem is by Guadalupe Isabel Duran, who was in 6th grade when she wrote it, so probably 11 years old. And she had the word love. It's called Love Walking Away. And she also uses a simile. A simile is a kind of metaphor, but instead of saying love is a rose, you say love is like, it's similar. We wouldn't say that now because it's a bit of a cliche, love is a rose. We've heard it a million times, and when we've heard something over and over, we stop paying attention. So that's the reason we don't like to use cliches. If you've heard it before, if it sounds familiar, go for something original. Charles Bukowski said, "Love is a dog from hell." This is what Guadalupe said about love. Love is like a golden apple, nice, but hard to get. Day by day, it passes through my heart. Day by day, it grows bigger like a wave in the sea. It makes my heart beat fast and quick. Love is like a snowflake you wish to have in your hands forever, but it just dissolves and goes away. Isn't love beautiful? Ella, you're smiling. You think it's pretty wise for an 11-year-old? She's already learned so much about love. I'm going to stop. Oh, I didn't want to stop that share. I wanted to read you one more poem, but let me see if I can. I have a poem by Zbigniew Herbert. Can you see my screen, or did I lose the share? Okay, let me see. I'll read this last poem. And this is another poem about fear, Our Fear by Zbigniew Herbert. Our fear does not wear a night shirt, does not have owl's eyes, does not lift a casket lid, does not extinguish a candle, does not have a dead man's face either. Our fear is a scrap of paper found in a pocket. Warn Wojciech, the place on Długa Street is hot. Our fear does not rise on the wings of the tempest, does not sit on a church tower. It is down to earth. It has the shape of a bundle made in haste, with warm clothing, provisions, and arms. Our fear does not have the face of a dead man. The dead are gentle to us. We carry them on our shoulders, sleep under the same blanket, close their eyes, adjust their lips, pick a dry spot, and bury them. Not too deep, not too shallow. So this is your job, is to take your abstract noun and transform it into something we can see, hear, taste, touch, smell. It can be a list, a catalog of metaphors, or you can take one metaphor and expand it. But the idea is to take this abstract thing, this invisible thing, and make it visible, make it concrete. Okay, can you do that? Sure you can. Okay, all right. So I think, how about 15 minutes for writing, and then you can turn your sound, your microphone, click your little microphone, and if you'd like, you can click that little camera so that we don't see you. And I have 9:35 here, so I don't know what time that is in Ukraine. Marina, what time is it there?
It's 7:35
Okay.
or 19:35. It's like 10 hours.
Okay, so 9:50 my time. I will turn my camera and my microphone back on, and we'll see what you did. And just remember, it's a process of discovery. You don't know yet. Look around for an image. Hope is the lamp on my desk I haven't turned on yet. Okay. Hope is a paperweight made by a friend who was a glass blower. Just anything. Okay. I'm going to turn off my camera and my sound, and I'll see you in 15 minutes. Any questions? No. Okay. You would turn if you would, your microphone, click your little audio button and your little video button so we can see you, even if you're in your pajamas. Did anybody surprise herself or himself? Anybody write something they didn't expect to write? Anything happen that you didn't know would happen? No one? Olga Gutnik, you're smiling, and that seems to be a good sign. Would you share with us what you wrote?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me well? Yeah.
I can hear you, yes. What was your word, first of all?
My word is vulnerability.
Oh, okay.
And if I understood the task correctly, vulnerability for me, it's a deer that is hiding in a wood, but willing to find grass to feed her fawn.
Mm.
It's the smell of a freshly baked apple pie that you are eager to try, but first you should bake it.
Okay.
It's the feeling of a rough, hot rock on the peak of the mount that you managed to climb up. And it's the sound of cheering violin that is throbbing in my heart of hearts.
Ooh, read that last one again, please.
What?
Can you read the last part again?
Yes, it's the sound of cheering violin that is throbbing in my heart of hearts, deeply in my heart.
Okay, I love that, in my heart of hearts, but it's the sound of cheering?
Violin, yeah.
Violins, like the musical instrument.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. Wonderful. Throbbing in my heart of hearts. Thank you. Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Ludmila, would you like to share with us what you wrote?
Yeah, but I want to say that I have chosen resilience, and resilience in this case, it's not the so the quality to be flexible. It means like to withdraw and to, I don't know, to cope with all obstacles that you have in yeah. And first of all, I wanted to compare it as a tree in the storm.
Okay.
But then I decided that it's going to be fire.
Mm.
And I have created some kind of poem. And by the way, I have known now one new word that helped me to explain this. But let's let it be. Okay. In the heart of the storm, a small fire glows,
Mm.
flickering faintly when the wild wind blows. Heavily rain pours down, it's fierce and fast, yet the flame holds on, its roots deep and vast. The severest rages, shadows loom near, but this little fire feels no fear, though it may waver, bend and sway. An ember within keeps darkness at bay. It dances with brave, steady and bright, as a warrior in the thick of the night. And when the storm finally loosens, the fire breathes deep, becoming adjacent. With sparks that taste like iron and smoke, it
Hmm.
rises, emerging from ember to orc.
Oh, wow. Read that ending again. Sparks start beginning with a sparks. Sparks that, or one line before
that-
the spark.
The fire, so with sparks that tastes like iron and smoke,
Right.
it rises, emerging from ember to orc.
Bluetooth pairing.
Emerging from ember to oak.
Yeah,
Wonderful. Wow. That really is magical, because you had the idea first to start with the tree, and then you said, no, it's not a tree, it's this fire. It's
Yeah.
this small fire. And then it becomes a tree.
a tree, yeah. Then I realized
You
that
close
I
it
came
instead of-
back to it.
Yeah,
Right.
instead of the tree burning in the usual order, you've reversed the chronology. It's like, I don't know, it's like when you run a film in reverse. And from the tree, from the fire, the tree emerges. That's incredible. I love sparks that taste of iron and smoke. It's so visceral and it's so original. It's kind of mixing the senses together. I mean, you really, sparks that taste of iron and smoke. It's tough, it's not it's not sweet, this taste.
Yeah, but this is about us, Ukrainians. That's why we have smoke and iron. That's why this is like the reflection of it.
Yeah,
For me.
obviously, but it's not, it's this is what happens, the poet Galway Cannell said, in the poem, it's mostly our inner world,
Yeah,
very personal. He
Yeah.
said, but when you go deeply enough into the personal, suddenly you're outside everywhere. When you go, it's a kind of paradox. The more you go into what's personal and specific to you, the more it's possible that it becomes universal.
yeah.
Okay. And I think that's really true. Sparks that taste of iron and smoke. This, I believe, Ludmila, would be a wonderful title for an anthology of poems about this time in Ukraine. Sparks that taste of iron and smoke.
Okay, I will take note about this. Thank you for opportunity to express my ideas.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to? I'd be happy to spend the next half hour listening to what people wrote. I'd like to push you a little bit. Any of the people who have their camera turned off, willing to turn their camera on and read for us? Anyone? Larissa, Serhi. I'm just looking at names here. Svetlana. If you are, Yulia, turn on your, meanwhile, those I can see, I see Victoria. Victoria, would you like to read for us?
Yeah, I can. Well, I decided to, I opted out of one option that I had, and I thought of another one, and then I thought of another one, and I ended up with empathy. And this is why my poem is so short, but I hope that it's you will be empathetic with me.
Okay.
So empathy. Empathy is how my tongue burns when I see you burn your tongue while you're drinking your tea.
Oh,
Empathy is how the leaves of our houseplants close at night in solidarity, not knowing they call it nictinisty. I looked it up. Sorry. Empathy is how pages of a book get soaked all together when I get caught in the rain. Yeah, and I wanted to add a few more other
those are wonderful. I
metaphors,
didn't
but
understand the word that about the leaves.
nictinisty. Apparently, it's the ability of plants to move their leaves and close the flowers and the leaves at night and open
Wow.
them during the day. And I
Wow.
thought that they all do it together and as if in solidarity. Yeah.
Those are wonderful, and you can quilt them all together. I was looking for a poem I have by Charles Simic about fear that works in a similar way. It's very, very short. Could you read it again?
Yeah, okay. Empathy is how my tongue burns when I see you burn your tongue while you're drinking your tea. Empathy is how the leaves of our houseplants close at night in solidarity, not knowing they call it nictinisty. Empathy is how pages of a book get soaked together when I get caught in the rain.
It's wonderful, especially that last one. And you'd like to keep going with it.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to complete it because changed my mind several times.
Okay, no, but it's wonderful. I think it's a wonderful little structure you've created that you can just keep filling things in like this. All of them work beautifully. So go back to it. It's there for you. I do have one more exercise, and it kind of flows from this one. If there's anybody else who would like to read, I'd love to hear. Daria? Oh, wait. Oh, there was somebody. I saw the hand. Yulia, you keep moving around like you're here on my screen and then you're here. Okay. Please.
It's because Daria also decided to participate, and it would be great to hear her. Well, if you don't mind, I have a short poem. So about beauty, which I has chosen before. They say some things are beautiful. What is beauty? Everyone finds beauty in different things. Beauty is my tabby cat. Beauty is a golden sunset. Beauty is a pregnant woman. Beauty is a kind human. Beauty can't be shaped or owned, but might be lost or stoned. That's all.
That's wonderful. It's
Thank you.
wonderful. And I applaud Raisa's applause. It can't be shaped or owned, but it can be.
Might be or can be lost and stoned.
Yeah, can't be shaped or owned. It's wonderful. And I love that the poem is like, it reminds me of the Mary Oliver poem, the way it moves, it's kind of one scenario to the other. And then to use this rhyme at the end to make a rhyming couplet in a sonnet, we would call it a heroic couplet. So that really kind of gives the poem a finality, at the end. So it's really wonderful. And yes, beauty. What is beautiful? I was speaking with a group of fourth graders one time, 8-year-olds, about using, so try not to use these abstract adjectives when you describe something, because, well, when I say beautiful, what do you see? We all see different things. And one little girl shrugged and said, well, beautiful, that's just your opinion. I said, it's true. It's true. It doesn't really, show me anything. So I learned a lot from working with children who still live very close to their imagination. And I think they haven't yet unlearned that words can be magical, that there's a kind of an alchemy that happens when you write a poem. So I'm going to share with you, and I'll let you see it. This is a poem that was written by a young girl in the 5th grade. You know, by which point, when you're in 5th grade, you probably already know a lot about love. It's called I Remember. I remember a boy gave me a kiss on my cheek, but that boy was so ugly. Nobody liked that boy. I told him, leave me alone, and I told the teacher, but now he is my boyfriend. His name is Eduardo. He lives by my house. Now he goes to junior high school, and now he gives me lots of kisses on my cheek, and he is not ugly no more. So, so somebody goes from, you like that, Ludmila? It's you know, and it happens very quickly in this poem. It happens, you know, and you know, there's a mistake in the grammar at the end, but it's a really excellent mistake. Robert Rauschenberg said, being an artist is learning to make the right mistakes. If she had said it correctly, and he is not ugly anymore, it would still be good, but it's not as strong as when she says, and he is not ugly no more. You know, so now he's my boyfriend. And so I love that one. And she uses these 2 words that can be like a spark to just ignite, sparks that taste of iron and smoke, a spark that can ignite a whole poem. I remember. I remember. There are 3 poets I can think of off the top of my head that wrote book-length poems that began, I remember. Georges Perec, a French poet, after World War II, he wrote a book that is it's a catalog, it's a list. And each item in the list begins with Je me souviens, I remember. And that phrase is repeated so that it creates a kind of rhythm, which is what repetition does. Rhyme is really just a form of repetition. It's a kind of repetition. With rhyme, you're repeating the sound. This kind of repetition is called anaphora. You don't have to know the word if you're not interested, but it's again from the Greek, and it's when you use a phrase or a word to begin. Anaphora. And so Georges Perec wrote this book-length poem. It's a long catalog, Je me souviens, about things he remembered from his life in France before the war. So it was very personal, but it also became a kind of document, a kind of historical document, a kind of memorial to those times. An American poet who was also a visual artist, Joe Brainard, decided to do that also. He wrote a book-length poem called I Remember, which is really a lot about his growing up in the United States in the 1950s. I'll read you a little piece of that. I won't read you the whole thing. Let's see. I'll share my screen. Well, I think I won't share my screen. I think you can understand that the language is very simple. And it's a list, which makes it quite simple also. From I Remember by Joe Brainard. I remember the only time I ever saw my mother cry. I was eating apricot pie. I remember the first time I saw television. Lucille Ball was taking ballet lessons. I remember I used to have a lot of beautiful red and yellow and black snakes in bright green grass. I remember staying in the bathtub too long and having wrinkled toes and fingers. I remember having a casual chat with God every night and usually falling asleep before I said, Amen. I remember white bread and tearing off the crust and rolling the middle part up into a ball and eating it. I remember stranded on an island in the middle of the ocean cartoons. I remember the tobacco smell of my father's breath. I remember stories about babies being born in taxicabs. I remember when your beet juice runs into your mashed potatoes, red mashed potatoes. I remember at least once only pretending to make a wish before blowing the candles out. I remember how long a seemingly empty tube of toothpaste can go on and on and on. I remember rearranging boxes of candy so it would look like not so much was missing. I remember salt on watermelon. I remember that a good way to get a maybe instead of a no is to ask for what you want in front of company. So it's very, very personal, and yet, I don't know, probably different memories, different lines speak to different people. But, you know, I remember the tobacco smell of my father's breath. I remember white bread and tearing off the crust and rolling the middle part up into a ball. So he uses this anaphora, I remember, and you might notice that it creates a rhythm and he changes the rhythm sometimes by moving through some of these metaphors, memories quickly with shorter lines, and then slowing down in other places by including more details about the memory. But it's all sense memory, smells, tastes, images, sounds, things you can touch, that tearing that bread. I remember the soft white middle of the bread. Chances are that Joe Brainard's memories make you remember certain things from your own life. It's that funny thing, as soon as we start talking about our memories, it's like opening a gate into the past. Once we start remembering, the memories come flooding back, and each memory sparks other memories so that you can see, well, maybe, yeah, I could fill a whole book with these memories. I'm going to read you a little poem by a young woman who was in the 6th grade in East Los Angeles when she wrote it. She was, so she was probably about 11 years old, again called I Remember. I remember that in Mexico, my grandma used to send me outside to gather corn seeds that were left on the train tracks. I remember trying to act like Marilyn Monroe and walk down the stairs, but when I tried it in high heels, I fell down. I remember trying to teach my dog to sit, but I couldn't, and my dog just stared at me. I remember when my dog was sick and it was dying, and I was crying and crying. I remember on my sister's birthday, everyone paid attention to her. When I called for my mom, she would just ignore me. I remember when I first tasted ice cream. It was so cold that I spit it out on my sister's face. I remember when I ate a penny and my mom was worried sick and I had to go to the hospital. I remember trying to fly out the window and getting a big bruise on my arm. I remember trying to rake up the backyard, but when I stepped on the shovel, it hit my head and made a big bump on my head. I remember when I was trying to dance, but all I could do was jump. I remember when I went to school, I was the best one to talk, read, and write English. I remember when I tried to read, but I kept saying ton instead of tongue. I remember the first crush I had on a boy, but he liked another girl. I remember when I did a play and one of my friends said her part wrong and she just stared at the crowd. So
It seems to me, sorry, that this was not a young lady, but some kind of very adult. And
but
he experienced her life.
yeah, I think that was surprising thing about it. Didn't surprise me when I worked with children, but when we gave a poetry reading and their parents came, the parents were often very surprised, even shocked, because, you know, we sometimes don't recognize that children can have a very deep inner life, you know? So here's the exercise I'd like you to try, to just use that anaphora and use your 5 senses. It's most effective when there's a sensory detail. I remember the tobacco smell of my father's breath. I remember staying in the bathtub too long and my toes and fingers were wrinkled. So just begin with one memory. Sometimes it's not even clear why some things are so vivid in our mind, like a little snapshot. But begin with one and begin with this anaphora, I remember. You don't have to go in chronological order. You don't have to write in the order that things happen, because that's not how memory works. Memory tends to move around a lot. So allow yourself to drift from one memory to the next. Sometimes it's like a dream. Sometimes we wonder, do I remember that, or is it from a dream? Here, it doesn't matter. What matters is to use your 5 senses and move through time, backwards, forwards. Perhaps you'll even remember something you had forgotten until now. Okay. So start with a line, I remember, and start with one very small, very personal, very particular memory. And just keep moving. Don't stop too long on one memory. Just keep moving, leaping, sparking from one memory to the next. And let's turn off your camera and mic if you wish, and come back in 12 minutes, 13 minutes. So write quickly. Don't censor yourself. Don't stop yourself. Just keep going. If you could pause for a moment. Here you can stop anywhere. Okay. You can stop anywhere and go right back in, because it's a list. You know, a list you can add a little bit at a time. You can go back. It's very, as a form, it's really very, very flexible. So I hope you will go on with it, because I'm sure each of you could fill a book. Right? The story of our lives. It's endless. Would anybody like to share some of what she wrote, or even talk about the process a little bit? Raisa, how did you do?
Okay, fine. I will open this rubric. Yes, this section I remember. Okay, I tried to use, or just to speak, not to speak, but to use all these 5 things. See,
Good.
feel, yeah, hear, and so on. I remember my son's first steps. I remember freshness in the air after summer heavy rain. I remember tender, soft petals of a yellow rose in my palm. I remember a loud missiles explosion on that winter morning. I remember juicy peach, which I has grown myself.
Mm. Wonderful. You could really, that could be the whole poem. You don't need any more because the contrast between the images, it says so much, you know? And this is another kind of magical thing about a poem. In a poem, the silences also speak, you know? So this going from this rose petals, these yellow rose petals in my hand, in my palm, to the missiles exploding with no comment, just from one image to the next.
I followed your recommendation just to put down that idea which first comes to my mind. And that's why just it happened without any intention. I just, at that very moment, I thought about that and I put it down. Okay, and that's why just this is the result.
Yeah, and I think that's when you allow yourself to do that, that's when you create something really original and magical. A lot of poets will say, to write this poem, I have to get out of my own way, you know, and just allow this other part of you to speak. But I think that poem race is very whole the way it is. And the last image again, could you repeat the last image?
I remember juicy peach, which I has grown myself in my garden.
It's wonderful. It's so evocative as an image. It just you could smile or you could cry.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
And you know
just
that just I want to thank you for this very activity because during long months I cannot say that I feel excited, well, but you see, it's some kind of depression. I try to do a lot of work. I try to participate in different events, but to be active as I was before, Marina can prove that. Yeah, I cannot. You know, that just something just makes me stop. And it is rather difficult for me to think about positive things. But thanks to this activity, it just, yeah, it's some relaxation, you know, that just inside and in my brains. It is
I'm
really,
so
really helpful and healing. Thank
I'm
you.
so glad, Raisa. And yeah, when you can't do what you usually do, well, do something else. And for me, you know, it's a time in the United States, these past few days, a lot of us feel quite shocked and quite afraid about the future. And I don't know if you know who Patti Smith is. Do people know Patti Smith? She's like an icon in the United States. She's a poet and a rock musician. She's now 78 years old and she's still like, she just lets her hair gray and she wears old clothes, but everybody looks up to her very much. And she, you know, she puts a little blog and she said, okay, this is how we're feeling. And, you know, live in the world that is your world and get back to work. Do creative, do something creative. And I thought, oh, good idea, but no, can I do it? And then I picked up a poem I was working on and I found, yes, I can put my energy here. So, and also I'm glad it's therapeutic, but I'm even more happy that it's a beautiful poem. because it speaks to, you know, when you make something like this, something real, it's not like a greeting card that says, oh, I hope you feel better, or it's something real. The juicy peach I grew in my own garden. And we can all partake of this because you put it in words. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I would love to hear one or two other people. We're a little bit over time, but Marina, maybe we can take 3 or 4 more minutes. Anybody interested? Ella, are you interested in sharing with us?
Well, yeah. I remember the odor of my granny's cake from the oven. I remember feeding my neighbor's fluffy rabbits through the fence.
Oh.
I remember the smell of fallen leaves in the forest. I remember seeing my grandson lying under the lamp as soon as he was born. I remember hearing my mom's voice in the phone at 8 a.m. every morning. I remember seeing black smoke at a distance when the war started. I remember crunching while eating a sweet cucumber from my kitchen garden. I remember thinking I have to ask my mom about it, but it was too late.
Oh, what an ending. Yeah. Wonderful.
I used to tell my students, ask your parents questions while you have them, while they are alive. Yeah.
Same for me, Ella. I would tell students here in the US, I would say, well, what kind of food did your grandmother make? Or what country did they come from? Because most students here or in the schools in Los Angeles their parents or grandparents were immigrants. And they said, oh, I don't know. And I said, run home now and ask, But it's such a resonant line, Ella, to end with, because I think it goes on all your life. That you think of something, you want to tell your mother, you want to ask and then you realize you can't. My mother's eldest sister, who lived into her 90s, when she was in her 80s, she told me, every day I get the urge to pick up the phone and call my mother. And her mother had been gone for 50 years. So but it's the whole thing is, I love the image of feeding the neighbor's rabbit through the fence.
Yeah.
Smell of leaves in the forest and the grandson under the lamp. Black smoke at a distance. And then that line, to end with that line about your mother is really, really beautiful, really wonderful.
So I would say this activity is kind of a stream of consciousness. You you go with the flow.
Yeah. And it's not as easy as it sounds, because it's not so easy to trust your own memory and your own imagination. And they really work together, memory and imagination. They're not separate.
That's true.
Completely. So, and to find the specific details, that's what makes it so, the details of the feeding the rabbit through the fence. So people think, oh, stream of consciousness, you don't have to do anything, but you do. You have to find the language and channel it and keep it real. Keep it specific and personal and concrete. And sometimes you go somewhere in this stream of consciousness that you didn't know you were going, and maybe it's a bit shocking, maybe it's makes you vulnerable to yourself or tender, but you go, so I think we're out of time. Marina, do you want to say anything or ask anything, or do you want to share anything that you wrote today?
I wrote a lot, but I think that I will share with you the chat and
Okay.
with the participants. Of
Great,
course,
great.
that was, for me, that was so calming and soothing. And thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Unbelievable, Cecilia.
My pleasure. And I have a busy few weeks now time because I have a new, very small book that's just been published, what we call a chat book, and I'm doing some readings and presentations and some traveling. But I hope if you like that, maybe we can pick up in the new year. If we don't
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
pick up in the new year.
Yeah.
But we'll keep in touch, and you'll send me. I would love to have some of these poems, because then, you know, if you don't mind, I use them when I teach again to show other people. Here is an example.
Please do this.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to meet in Kiev on the 12th and 13th of December. And that is where we're also going to share the poems.
Wonderful. So you can have a poetry reading.
Yeah, I hope I will send you the poems that we will share, because
Great.
that is
Great.
yeah.
Oh, that will be wonderful. Yeah, that will be wonderful. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Marina, especially, and take good care. And we'll see you in the new year, if not before. And have a wonderful time in Kiev. And I'll be with you in spirit. And maybe in the summer I can be with you in fact. Okay.
This is what we would love to. Yeah.
I would love it too. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Bye-bye.
For this.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.